What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 6 of Property is a Game of Finance. Today we're joined by Bryant.
Yo.
What's going on, man?
Joined you.
Yeah, he's a real estate agent out of Agency Central. It's your business, right?
Yep.
It's in Wilton. Just sold my brother's house as well.
Yes.
Thanks for that, mate. He was very happy. He got a very good price.
Only guy in the area.
Yeah. How did you set that up? Because is there any other agents in Wilton at all?
No. We're even when we went there, it was probably a little premature. So
Okay.
in terms of how much stock there is, how much turnover there is, it's probably not enough to maintain a business, particularly in 2018 when we went there. But it's massively growing. That's why we're there in the first place.
Yeah. And I mean, you got in just before COVID too. So how long did you have for your business to start ticking over before COVID hit?
A bit under 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit under 2 years where we were trying to get our name established in that area. And then when COVID hit, as you know, real estate went better than what was projected. So it wasn't like we had to stop and restart. Sort of exponentially grew from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, starting a brand new business. So you got into real estate pretty young, right?
23.
You're a personal trainer first and then got into real estate. What made you make that change?
Man, I wasn't making any money. And the guy I work for, who I work for at the gym in Revesby, he's a broker now. Shout out Michael Henry.
Nah, don't worry about that. He's the only broker you need to know is right here.
He's a nice bloke. He's not competition. He's out of the area, but I worked for him, and at the time he was making not much more money than me, but he had a portfolio of like 6 properties in a spot where he was in his early 30s, and he's like, technically I could retire, but the goal is to make X amount of passive income per week. That's what I want to get towards. That was just beyond me. And he would harass me when I was like 18 and first got there to buy these books, read this, get into that. And when you're 18 and you're not that fascinated by that sort of thing, it's like, yeah, whatever, man, I'll get to it. And then once I started getting frustrated with not really ticking any of my goals off financially, that was when I was like, all right, something needs to shift. And I went to property as a means to getting access to knowledge and investing in property. You know, I thought I'd be a little bit more finger on the pulse with deals coming up or what to look for in a property. I didn't realize that real estate sales was an avenue for making a decent amount of money in itself. And then you can leverage property from there. Yeah.
I wanted to also give you credit because you were the first one to actually get me interested in property and just to start. You were the first one. I remember that gym we went to with Finno, and you gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad.
You had property though. Your
dad,
but my dad,
like, he just told me, buy a property, buy a property. But it was just a thing that I did through school. I thought it was cool. But
what you meant to do.
But the self-development side of it and like striving to do something better, have goals, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that book was, I didn't even read a book in English. Like through high school. But then when you gave me that book, it was just, I just read the whole thing. And then from there, I just started reading books after books after books. And then I said to you one day, I was like, I'm going to become a mortgage broker because I looked at you in real estate and I was looking at it as like, I don't think I would like sales. Which is funny because I'm now in sales. Just didn't know.
Selling.
Yeah, I know. And I didn't think I wanted to be a property manager because the money wasn't that good. Ended up doing that for a bit.
Trying it.
Yeah. But yeah, man, you were the first one to set me on that path.
Well, I just told you to read the book the guy from the gym told me to read. Like,
it worked, man.
It worked on me too.
It worked.
That's how I got, personal training. I had no money to facilitate property. So get into property to try and facilitate it.
This was years ago too, man. This was like
2015.
Okay, so, 7 years ago.
Yeah, a bit over 7 years ago.
Long time.
Yeah.
So how long were you an agent before you started your own business?
The way, that's an interesting one because the way that it flows, I feel like a lot of people think they'll come into real estate sales and just kill straight off the bat. And the reality is you got to eat shit for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that was interesting was in 2015, I don't know if you remember, the market was crazy. Like the first open home I ever went to was on Roslyn Crescent in Campbelltown or something like that. And I was just assisting the listing agent on this property. 33 buyers come to the first open home I've ever been to. There's like 8 offers submitted. They're all in writing on the spot. It's like, I didn't even know about the house. So people asking me questions and I don't know. And they're still like, okay, cool, here's the offer. It was just a ridiculously almost like that was the hottest of hot markets at the time. And that was my only understanding. So you'd meet 30, 40, 50 buyers at each open home. Each property would sell at the first open home. I still remember the first house I was working on in Ingleburn, where it didn't sell at the first open home. And I called the lead agent I was working under at the time. I was like, man, market is fucked. Like, this didn't sell first. And so that period where you're eating shit and just doing menial tasks, man, like it'd be something like an hour of delivering letters, 2 to 3 hours of door knocking, you'd have a feed, and then you come back to the office and cold call from 1 till 5:30.
Yeah, just prospecting.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you got a break from that if you booked appointments.
Yeah.
So if you met someone that was willing to get the lead agent you were working under into their house, you could go along to that. And so I prospected my ass off because I didn't want to prospect. Like, the more I prospected, the more I could get into appointments. I did that for maybe 6 months. And then I got taken under the wing of one of the guys as what he would have called his buyer's agent, which is not the conventional, the way you and I understand buyer's agents. It's more, you deal with our buyers, I'll deal with our sellers. So when people inquire, when people want a private inspection, I would deal with all of that. I would deal with the database of buyers, that sort of thing. And I did that for maybe 2 years or so, and then was my own agent for a year. And then we went out to Wilton.
Yeah,
from
nice.
there. So maybe 3-4 years.
Okay, no, it's good. So launching a brand new business, what was your marketing strategy to get into that market? And why'd you even pick Wilton in the first place?
We weren't the ones that identified Wilton initially, but ours a very complex structure. So I won't bore everyone with that. It'd more so be to say the people that were bringing us on board at the time. So when I say we, my current business partner, Bobby, and I, we were introduced to Wilton, and it wasn't necessarily our first choice until we went and saw it, and it was really nice and everyone was friendly. And then we started looking into it, and the infrastructure that was planned for Wilton that is now starting to come to fruition was wild. Talking this being the centerpiece, but between a heap of major CBD areas. So we then became interested in Wilton, and they pulled and said, hey, we're just going to stay in Campbelltown. We sort of said, no, we need Wilton. If we're going to come, what do we need to do to get it? And I touched on it briefly just then, but right now you've got one major subdivision, which is 10 to 12 years old, which is like a prestigious golf course estate, very nice homes, very safe, 24-hour security, that sort of thing. Wilton Greens, across the other side of one of the main roads there, is another 3,500 properties, and that's more affordable living, so smaller lots, no security, but nice area, kind of like an Oran Park type comparison, I'd say. But there's also 2 other major subdivisions which have been greenlit. So there's plans for major shopping centres, recreational lakes, restaurants, cafes, all of that, more schooling, more travel infrastructure, all of that is planned for Wilton. And initially Wilton, having not gone there before I started working there, it seemed like it wasn't in that practical location. But the reality is it's just on the Hume. It's 20-25 minutes from Wollongong, the Southern Highlands, the Macarthur. Being just on the Hume, Canberra and Sydney or the airport were easy access. So the more we thought about it, the more it made sense that they would make this a centerpiece between those areas for when the airport comes in, or just for development in the area. And so that's why we went there. We figured we might be in a little early. We might have to survive off referral work outside of area for however many years, but it will grow to a point where we could definitely sustain a business there.
Yeah. And well, why hasn't anyone else come in?
That's a good question. There's very limited commercial infrastructure there at the moment. So we think that will be the case. Right now we have in our lease, we have exclusivity in the shops that we're at. So maybe there's a desire for someone else to get there. The agents who were dominant in the area at the time from the Picton area, so 10-15 minutes away, might not have seen the need to have a shop there when they're relatively close and already have an established market share.
Yeah, I guess you...
Look, it's a good question because we thought it was valuable, and in terms of business experience, we're not.
Do you need a shop front though? Like, do you think it's a shop front that made you so popular in that area, or was it the online presence?
Look, credibility, I don't think real estate agents need a shop front, but I think credibility wise, consumers aren't ready for agents to not have a shop front and still be seen as legitimate. So
Not yet.
I think if you think about the real estate business model, if you want to sell a house, you got to go see it. So the appointments are at an owner's home. If you want to sell the house, you got to show it. So the appointments are at the same house. all the appointments can happen at property and they don't need to happen at an office. No one's looking past our window. We're an upstairs office. No one's walking past our window and buying property. That hasn't been the case for years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, we think that will be unnecessary if you fast forward 5-10 years. But I think for credibility, in the meantime, you need something. But to answer your original question, what the marketing plan was?
Yeah, the launching the business.
I feel like this is an interesting one because I feel like everyone has a different business model and the way that we operate just happened to suit the area that we're in. So it's not to say that this would even be a good idea for somewhere like a CBD area. You might go to Bondi and find that our methods were terrible. I don't know how Bondi operates, but it just happened to click well with it's a very community-based area. So we did that. We initially introduced ourselves with a door knock, but we didn't ask for anything. All we said was, hey, look, we're new in the area, not trying to kick you out of your house, but if you can ever help out, this is us as a business card. When we went back around, we said, look, we need trades. We're new to the area. What do you do? Can we help your business via our business? And so that was our initial sort of face-to-face. And then we stopped that. We volunteered in the schools. We sponsored local teams. We made sure we were at everything. We made sure if we ate lunch, we ate it at their cafes or whatever it might be. We were much more network based as opposed to just cold prospecting as it is conventionally. And then we tried much more to focus on if we can get a really good result and drive social media proof off the back of that, but also drive word of mouth off the back of that, can we patiently build a business? And as I said, survive in the meantime on referral work. And so that took 3 years or 2-3 years of not a lot coming our way and us still having to go and piece together bits and pieces before people in Wilton started saying, okay, these guys are sort of undeniable. Our price averages were higher per square meter by quite a bit. And our track record in terms of market share was growing and growing. So we were worth at least an opportunity for the business in most cases after about 3 years.
Yeah. And you had a podcast as well, didn't you?
We did. Yeah, initially that was a big part of it. Social media was probably a bigger part of it than most agents. Yeah. But that's where we feel everyone's attention is. You know, even I can't even, I don't know about you, I can't even sit through ad breaks now without.
What ad breaks?
Well, that's you know, half time, you name it. A knock on in the rugby league. All right.
Yeah. What's on my phone?
Yeah, I'll kill this time. That's literally our attention span now. Yeah. So we were probably a bit more social media centric than most real estate agents. And we tried to focus on a few things. We wanted first, like I mentioned, social proof. So we want to show people we're good at our business. The second thing we want to show off is that we're human beings and that, you know, this is our personality. This is what we're like. You can trust us. You can trust someone you know. And so we needed to put who we are out there. Maybe it was a bit entertaining. Maybe it was a bit vulnerable. Just something personal.
Well, even the way you got the message across, because a lot of the time it wasn't just a photo with words. It was like, Bobby, you know, turn the camera around, talking about something. Like the way you did the Easter egg hunts and the colouring in competitions with the school and that, and the way you documented that. I was just like, these guys are geniuses, eh?
Well, it was more like we liked reciprocity. We liked doing things that felt good, and maybe you'd get something in return if you do the right thing by people to come back to you. So that was that second element, and then the third element was, can we teach somebody something? Can we make somebody more confident if they're going to deal with buying and selling real estate? And that's where things like the podcast came in, where maybe we could podcast a little bit of a blog, but mostly the podcast, where we could bring snippets from that and show people, hey, if you're about to sell, maybe this is something that you should be asking at the table when you're interviewing agents. We could help people consume real estate agents because they're not notoriously popular.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let's get into that, because people wanting to watch this episode, they know you're a real estate agent, so we got to give them something. Now, what would you say is the main things you consider as a buyer when you're looking to approach a real estate agent? Because you're going to meet this person as well. You're going to recommend them to the seller, the person selling the property. So what are the main things you think that the buyer should be thinking about?
I think it almost depends on the agent. We suggest people would back themselves, because everyone's got a good BS radar. True. You can pretty immediately get a good feeling as to whether or not an agent is dealing, you know, in a genuine nature or not. There's a few questions that we think are silly. Has there been much interest in the property?
At a time like this? Eh?
Well, regardless of the time, you're not going to get a no.
Yeah. Nah, never.
No, mate.
Not from an agent. Yeah,
You're not.
Nah.
Like you're not going to get. But you might if you are. What we do suggest is if you're going to ask questions like that, make sure you're reading the response regardless. So the way we operate, we track KPIs for a property. You know, we know how many inquiries we'd expect on a property within 7 days, and if it's in our case it's 17. So if we expected 17 inquiries in the first 7 days, and someone says, "Has there been much interest?" We expect 17 inquiries. There's been 21. You know, it's an honest. That's the reality. There's an honest answer. So if it's been 14, there's been 14. So it's there or thereabouts. But it's more than one person. It's more than just you. So there's some honesty behind that. Whereas has there been much interest? And the answer is, oh yeah, plenty of people just got an offer. That's a frustrating one. The other frustrating one we find is that how willing agents are to break the law with their negotiation. In a private treaty sale, your offer's a private offer. So then why would your offer be leveraged against someone else's for a higher offer? We currently stand at 850. If you want to go 855, illegal. That's not allowed.
Yeah.
You know, you just submitted a private offer, and you can assume if someone else's offer is being shared with you, your offer is being leveraged against you as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like people have good radars for that sort of thing.
Yeah. But over the phone, I've had agents do that to me.
It's the most common way that agents operate and negotiate, and it's actually illegal. And you can figure that out too. You know, if you offer 850, the guide starts at 830 and your offer's rejected, you can no longer advertise 830. That's illegal as well. So there can be a few things where we figured if we can educate consumers on how to deal with real estate agents, by default, it would have to lift the standard of estate agent, which would be great. That was the goal. That was one of the major goals of the podcast in the first place. If we could force more agents to do the right thing because consumers knew better, that's another one as well. If you come into a property and you do your research, it's not a guarantee, but there's a good chance you would have seen more competing properties than the agent. You're not selling all of them. So if you've gone and inspected, done your research on 30 homes and he's got 10% market share, he's done 3 of them. Yeah. You know, you've seen 27 more. Be really, really thorough with your research. Then you can be polite with your offers and your interest. It doesn't need to be headbutting. Yeah. It can be something where you're saying, look, I understand where you're coming from completely. This is what we're seeing and this is what we're comfortable with from a price perspective. Yeah. And it's just very hard to argue someone who's killing you with kindness, but is right. You know, so they're a few little things, but if you trust your gut, people have good BS radars.
Yeah. What about sellers? Because I've never sold a property, but I remember listening to one of your podcasts about staging. So that's something I'm interested in, as well as other things that you might think are relevant.
In terms of what should a seller be looking for when they're sitting with an agent, or in terms of what's effective when selling?
Both.
Either or. In terms of what you should be looking for, it's almost a similar one. If you trust that somebody's going to do the right thing by you, that's a big element. Most of the time, an agent that will sit and tell you what you want to hear is probably not going to deliver on the result. So that's something to consider. If you really wanted the best price for your home, which is, you're a human being, I'm going to assume that's the goal when you're selling, is you want to get the very best price. What's the easiest thing for an agent who's either not quite skilled enough or not willing to have hard conversations with you? What's the easiest thing for them to do to win your business? Tell you what you want to hear. You want 1.2? 100% will get you 1 point. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then sign this 3-month contract. I'll lock you into it. In a shifting market like this, let's say you're stuck with me for 3 months. I promised you 1.2. It's not out there, mate. Buyers don't agree. Bang, 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 bang. 950. Too bad. You got to sell. You got to sell. So that's one thing. I'd be less focused on the price that you're told and more focused on the process that they're suggesting would get you the best price, and their track record in the area that proves their process is the right one. As far as selling is concerned with things like staging and what's effective, again, that can be different from area to area. What we have found in our area is that there's a willingness for people to spend a little bit more money on presentation and marketing, get things right, and appeal to those emotional homeowners that are likely purchasing their home. Wilton is a bit over 90% owner occupied, so it's not a high, it's not a high investment property area. A lot of the properties we deal with are a bit more established. So like I was saying, there's not a lot of first home buyers. So there's probably going to be a bit more ROI on some of those nicer touches. Whereas there could be other areas where you find it's just purely numbers. If it's great investment stock it might be pointless staging the home just for someone to come in and look at net yield and say, it's not for me.
Yeah.
You know, you wasted that money. For us, staging is a huge one.
Yeah. You also don't have a rent roll.
We don't.
Why is that?
Have you've been in property management?
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
How was it? Truly.
It's the worst thing in the world. But if you're the business owner, you don't have to deal with that as much.
I mean, you have to grow it. So we look at it like this.
But you can grow that on autopilot as you're selling properties. You'd get property management leads come through all the time.
Yeah, and so in that interim, let's say we organically grow a rent roll, right? We are in an area that's over 90% owner occupied. So let's say for every 100, we get 10, all right? And we turn over 50 properties a year. So every 2 years, we get 10 organic leads. We have to pay a full-time salary to someone in the interim.
Yeah.
For them to grow and nurture that. And then there's got to be training involved. There's got to be additional insurances involved. And then I'm preaching to the choir here, as a property manager, you're a mediator. So there's likely issues with the tenant, issues with the landlord, and you're meeting in the middle to try and come up with a fair and reasonable solution.
It's hard.
If you compound that by a decent rent roll, and people have rent rolls in the thousands. So let's grow that to something where it is worthwhile. And you've got thousands and thousands of properties in your rent roll, and you've got a staff of 10 to 20 property managers in your employ. How many fires are being put out, and whose head is on the chopping block if something goes wrong? It's the directors.
Yeah.
So the growth of that is not worth it in our opinion, particularly when we look at the next layer, which is if I was just to look at myself as an entity and say, where would I like to invest my money? Would I rather invest it in rent rolls or in owning property myself? I just couldn't see a scenario where I wouldn't want to own property myself. So if we could go out there and get a $500,000 rent roll, or we could buy a $500,000 property, it's absolutely set and forget. With the property that we bought, it's still heavily involved with heaps of additional costs with the rent roll we just purchased. So that's the first element. The second element is when we look at looking at exit strategies and saying, let's say we went really well growing this rent roll and we build it up to a monster. We got this $10 million rent roll. Unbelievable. Look at our business. How good is it? How many people at any given point in time have $10 million to spend and are choosing to spend it on a rent roll? So how saleable is that? Versus, let's say we have a $10 million property portfolio. How saleable is that? How many people are looking and trying to buy property at any given point in time? So for our own enjoyment of our life, and my business partner and I are very similar. We have no interest in taking over the world. We just want to spend time with family, pay the bills, have a great business, enjoy our life, have a bit of freedom off the back of that. Do we really want to go through the stresses of growing this monster just to have a hard to sell entity at the end,
Yeah.
That was what we're assessing. It's very conventional to grow a massive portfolio or a rent roll when you're in property, and a sales business is not worth anything. If we were to try and sell our business, it's only worth the goodwill that Bobby and I have. And if we were to decide to leave, what would be the point in having bought that business in the first place? Yeah. So we know we're not building a very saleable business in that sense. But our exit plan is more, if our saleable business was just that the business held these assets, they're always going to be saleable.
Yeah. So the business is going to buy property?
So far, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, we've got one in Wilton.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that helps too. We back the area.
Yeah.
We've very much put our money where our mouth is in that regard because we like the area, we like the people. So I don't know that it would exclusively be purchased through the business. We have the structures in place to do that. I think we would also want our own individual portfolios.
Yeah.
So I think right now that's the main priority, is to get those to the right place. But definitely eventually the priority will be the properties that we purchase through the business.
Okay, cool. What do you think about the market sentiment in the last couple of months? Because it's changing, right?
Yeah, very much so. You're probably seeing the same thing.
Yeah, but I've never found it hard to get business, because in finance there's always something happening, like whether it's a lot of purchases like we saw in the last couple of years, as well as refinances. But there's always somebody that's been sitting on their hands and haven't done a refinance for like 4 years. And that bank that they're with hasn't passed down any discounts that have been happening in the market, but they're just there. So there's always something that's going to be happening there. But with sales in real estate sales agents, that's it can be a little bit volatile, right?
For sure, it's property. Real estate values are volatile in nature. The extent to which they are depends on where you are and what the asset is. So if we were to do a simple breakdown of what we're noticing in our market, for example, which we can't extend to Sydney, we can't even extend to surrounding suburbs. We can only really talk about that market that we're noticing. The first thing that we saw off the back of maybe some media sentiment about what may come is an increase in the amount of investors that we were selling properties for. So all of a sudden we think now is the time to go. And we notice we're dealing with more tenanted properties. We're dealing with more landlords that are selling their homes. So you get an idea as to the people who really are trying to keep their finger on the pulse of the real estate market. What are they thinking? And they're starting to think, maybe I should cash in, right? And then off the back of the increases in the interest rates and the sentiment there, we notice different sectors of the market perform differently. So for example, the affordable element of, or the affordable homes in the area, they were still popular because, hey, that's all we can get. You know, the next level up, that sort of buying my second, possibly my third home, but like, let's say we're buying our second home or a young family and we've sold something like the entry level, that is really starting to stretch our budget. You know, these interest rate changes, even if they're minor, even if it's $30 on $1 million debt per week, whatever, even if it's something manageable like that, the sentiment around it, they started to pull back of, hang on, let's see what happens here, because we're not necessarily in that established a spot. Yes, we want more space, but let's see what happens over these next 6 to 12 months. I would even confess myself that I'm in a similar spot. We're looking to sell, we're looking to rent, see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months, and I'm looking to invest elsewhere in the meantime, right? When you go up from there, those people, that price point, and for us, it's sort of north of 1.5 into the low 2s. People with that sort of budget, they're not really impacted by this. They're a bit more established with their equity. They're a bit more established with their income. Their lifestyle goals are still going to be the same. I still want a better quality of life. I still want a larger property. We still want to downsize into something really, really classy. So different sectors of the market, depending on overall where you can sort of assume people are sitting, different sectors of the market perform differently. Entry level healthy, that mid range was a bit just wait and see what's going on, and the top end was still very popular.
Yeah.
That might change as the weeks go by. It's very dynamic, but at the moment, over the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks, that's what we've noticed the most.
I noticed it started before the election. Just before the election, I kept hearing people on the phone going, oh, you know, I'm not sure what the election's going to do. I want to wait. And then it became about interest rates. Like, oh, I don't know where these interest rates are going. I'm going to wait. I'm just like, you're in a position to do something now. You're going to hold this property forever. Like,
well, we're also in an area. So Southwest Sydney could probably be inclusive of this. It's not a seasonal area. It's not really anything more than life goes on and lifestyle needs to adapt, change, or improve. People will need to downsize when they need to downsize regardless. People are getting divorced, getting married, having children, regardless of what happens in the overall market. So if those things need to carry on, they need to carry on. So for us, almost regardless of what our property sells for, we have a son, we don't have enough space. I need more space. You know, there's a few lifestyle elements that I'd much rather our family be in a different spot. Cool. I'd take my house for whatever it sells for, regardless of overall market sentiment. So that's those things that really drive Southwest Sydney, and for us, the Wollondilly property market, they don't go away. You still need, you know, more space, less space to separate, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned you had a kid there. You were giving me some daddy advice before the
off-air
podcast started.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
don't share that advice.
No, I won't. It's good to see us, man. Like, to think 7 years ago you handed me that book and we just went on our different ways, and now we've come full circle, man.
Yeah, similar ways.
Yeah. So do you see yourself staying in real estate forever as a sales agent?
No.
No,
definitely not.
Where do you think you end up?
In business, in property, not as a sales agent. there's the goal is business, or the goal with investing, with setting up business, is to have it run for you. And that's absolutely been our goal. As I said, I don't need it to be a monster. I would just like it to be at a point where, if you think about real estate and its demands on your time, people work 9 to 5s. They need to see properties or discuss theirs before or after that. So I've missed bedtimes and things like that. I don't want to miss that. There'll be a point where my son starts playing sport. If he plays Saturday sport.
What sport?
Rugby league. Come on. I mean, whatever he wants.
Such an Aussie, mate.
Whatever he wants. But if he wants rugby league, that would be helpful for him.
What if he wants to play AFL, man?
Go get him, as long as you're a gun. But I don't want to miss that. And property, Saturdays in property are busy. So I would have a hard time. Right now from 23 to 30, and probably for a few more years as well, for however long. I'm still enthusiastic, and for that reason still feel I'm doing the right thing by an owner in being the one that represents them. Yeah. If I get to a point where I'm saying, yes, I'm the best person for this job, and my heart is not in it, in that 30-minute window where they really needed me to be energetic and to be on the ball, and I really want to be elsewhere, it's not fair for them. It's not what I want out of my life, and missing out with my son. So there'll be a point, I would say, where that's not what I do, but I can't see there being a point where I'd be out of property. It's probably the only thing that I've found myself heavily interested in. I've tried 1,000 jobs and sucked at all of them, and not stuck to any of them. But I like this. Yeah. You know, I like talking about it. I like property. See some beautiful houses now. It's sort of inspiring. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer.
So you'd take a step back from the agency, still run the day-to-day, but take a step back.
It would still operate the way this is probably another layer into our business, which I don't know how interesting this would be for you guys, but we have been employees for real estate agencies, and we have been able to run our own show as real estate agents. The difference in the income potential, or in the flexibility of your time, the ability to do things that you're comfortable with and consistently, it's so dramatically different that I'd also have a hard time employing people and not sharing that, which would mean our avenue would have to be a bit more about going into partnerships with people and a bit less about employing people that choose to be employees. Respect, you know, particularly in an industry like real estate. I'm not saying across the board.
So how would that work though? So it's not like a franchise though, right?
No.
So they would be using your brand.
They can use whatever brand they like.
But what's in it for them? Why wouldn't they just start their own business?
Exactly. Why aren't they? So what's the narrative that's being shared with them, that you have these guys who make more money for a business than Bobby and I do, but probably keep less, just simply from a tax and GST structure, would keep less for themselves and for their family. It's why would that be the case? Again, I don't want to step on any toes, but it's easier if you're a business owner and you have an employee that absolutely hits it out of the park. It's in your interest to keep him right where he is. But it should be in your interest to do the right thing by him and say, you need your own business, mate. And I can help you set that up. I can help you facilitate it. I can be as involved as you like, or I can be completely uninvolved. But if that's not the goal for you, I can't see this being the right thing for either of us. And that's just how we see it. And look, granted, business isn't for everyone. And there are definitely a select few that would be in that spot where they think, this is great. I make enough money, again, to put the food on the table, pay the bills. I don't need to worry about the stresses of running a business. But for anyone who is a bit more of a go-getter, and I dare say the agents who are doing really well are cut from that cloth, the goal should be running your own business. Yeah. So however we were to on-ramp that, whether it was through sort of training someone up under our employee to get to that point, or whether it was finding business partnerships, that would be how I would see it happening. It would almost be like, I'd be happy to be a BDM in that sense, you know, and find those right people and see if I can help them set up the way that we have.
Yeah, and your branding, like Agency Central, the whole thing, it's good find. I'm surprised that wasn't taken seriously.
Agency Central, yeah.
Just the whole, it's good.
It's well, there's a lot of agencies. So there's one agency, there's the agency, and there's things like that. So we get clouded in that, but probably more important is people don't come and see you at Organic, they come and see Jack. Yeah. You know, so we're Adam and Bobby, and we made it very, very clear that our branding was going to be us, the people. And you've done the same. Like, I don't speak to you because I loved your company. I like you. You know what I mean? And so that's a bigger part of the puzzle than anything else. The brand, that's what I was saying to you. Whatever brand somebody operated under is irrelevant, in my opinion, as long as they are the right person for the job, for the role, for selling your place, whatever it might be.
So outside of the agency, it's still in property, but would you consider doing something in the investing space, like buyer's agency or something like that?
A buyer's agency, maybe not.
What else is there?
I see value in buyers. Like I'll be using buyers agents myself. I think the work they do, the reason I use them is because the value they add is unbelievable. Like the work that they get through in order to present you with the right opportunity. There's a reason you pay the fee. I couldn't replicate that work. You're talking, 570 suburbs in Sydney. I'm not about to research all of them, let alone the ones in interstate to find. So that I couldn't see. If there was a business opportunity and I didn't have to build too much of that, then I could see myself being involved in that capacity. But I like the property side of it more. What we know, as I said, I might not be listing and selling property, but
Developing?
I might be developing property. I might be teaching the guy that is listing and selling property. I might be finding the business partner where he or she is out there killing it, but just hasn't been given that opportunity to go and set themselves up properly. You know, that part interests me. So I'd say, like, I really like property. I really love the business side of it, and I would probably see myself more involved in that business sense.
That makes sense.
You'd probably be similar.
Yeah, no, what you said makes a lot of sense about just having enough money to feed your family, get by, and then invest in other things that you enjoy. That's it.
That's your goal?
Oh yeah, I see finance as a broker. I see the potential in just what some brokers have made in 5 years, 10 years, and building up that trail income. Man, what I want to do with that money is this is just the beginning, but I'll always have my finger in it. And I'll always have a business with brokers, and that's always going to happen, but where it branches off is going to be completely different.
Yeah, it'd be similar.
All right, man. It's a pretty long podcast. 40 minutes. Not bad.
Just don't shut up.
It's a good catch up.
Yeah. I felt like I just spoke the whole time, just didn't breathe for 40 minutes.
That's all right.
Just a bit of Wim Hof for 40 minutes.
I did a 5-minute prep before you rocked up. I was just smashing out some questions, so it's good. Didn't run out of things to talk about. I dragged it out for you. Yeah, three questions, 40 minutes. Thanks for playing. Nah, it's all good. So, if you like this episode, please like, subscribe, share it with everyone. All Adam's details will be in the show notes. But catch you later. Thanks, bro.
Thanks, mate.
Easy.